Hi, everyone. This is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. So, predictably, what ends up happening whenever you start talking about things like, hey, maybe I should buy this or that, people work there usually don't comment on it, but what they do is they usually talk to people in their orbit and get them to opine and write pro or con articles. Um, so, an interesting article came by, and let me present it. And I think this epitomizes the fundamental problem in journalism. So here it is. Opinion. Charles Hoskinson would be the worst thing to happen to CoinDesk, written by a crypto journalist. And he goes in a bit and, criticizes me and says, yeah, well, spirit of lazy journalism, he might be worth some money. Perhaps he could buy it, but, oh, he probably can't. And so he's probably lying there. And Coinbase deserves better. And really, the crux of it is this last few paragraphs. He says, I have no doubt about the integrity of many journalists at Coindesk. Okay, blanket statement. They broke the FTX story, and it's no, actually, they didn't. CoffeeZilla and others did that, but okay. There were a lot of people for months that were claiming there were issues with FTX. Coindesk was completely silent and essentially caused the bankruptcy of Genesis to happen sooner rather than later. No, FTX caused that. Kind of know that because we were counterparty of theirs. They're a talented group that deeply care about reporting the truth. Okay. It's a real shame that some rich guy thinks he'd bring a better legacy to the outlet because I assure you he's wrong. None of Hoskinson's suggestions, from the ludicrous veracity bonds to NFT articles, do anything to fundamentally fix journalism. A new cryptocurrency oligarch to replace Barry Silbert won't benefit CoinDesk. Of course, then there's the I spoke to 10 guys. We remember that from Mike Novogratz, right? I spoke to numerous journalists and editors within and without the cryptocurrency industry about Hoskinson's dream of buying CoinDesk. There was a collective revulsion and a broad agreement that he doesn't know anything about journalism. But Hoskinson needs us all to know he can afford it if he really wants to. And so another personal attack on me. Cool, Charles. Very cool. Just promise you won't. So I brought up things like, for example, the concept of prediction markets right here. So prediction markets is basically where you start using money to predict outcomes of things. And what's really interesting is actually, if you look at a paper right here from Rosenblum and Notz, they basically said the results established that real money markets are significantly more accurate for non-sporting events than play money. We also examined the effect of volume and whether differences between forecasts are market specific. So long and short is that when you start creating financial incentives for things, you get different results. The fundamental problem with journalism right now is the incentive structure. Now, I don't know a lot about journalism. I do know that very few people in society trust journalism, trust the media. In fact, if you line 10 people up and you say, do you trust mainstream media? Probably 9 of 10 of them will say, not completely or not at all. That's not a Republican thing. That's not a Democrat thing. Because if you're a Democrat, do you trust Fox News? Do you trust Newsmax? Well, that's not real journalism. Oh, okay. So if you're a Republican, do you trust CNN, MSNBC? Well, that's not real journalism. So what you've done is you've redefined real journalism to be the political values that you have, and then the other political values is not real journalism. No, they're all journalism. They're all technically journalism. The problem is the incentive structures are wrong. The incentive of journalism right now is to make you angry, to divide you, to make you click. Let's be honest here. That's what it's about. It's not about objectivity, investigative journalism. It's not about truth. It's not about establishing a truth to power. I'm sorry, it's just not. And we have thousands of examples of that. From the origins of COVID to military spending to how the United States handles classified information, civil asset forfeiture, the nepotism and corruption in the U.S. government bureaucracy, all kinds of things. Never talk about it unless it's politically convenient to talk about it. Okay, so the problem is incentives. Where do they make money? So this concept of veracity bonds is aligning the concept of prediction markets to an outlet. So when you publish as a journalist or an organization like New York Times, a article, what you're doing is saying our credibility as an organization is on the line here. If we've published something that's inaccurate, well, then obviously we got egg all over our face. But when you live in a culture where it's okay to lie, because if you're lying for political or monetary reasons, your team will back you regardless of what you write, like the Hunter Biden laptop story is a great example of that. It's Russian disinformation until it's not. But the minute that you actually get caught, there's no consequences for that, then your incentive structure is broken. Veracity bond with a prediction market model says that if you get caught with your hand in the cookie jar, you actually lose money. And as a reader, I get to know, how serious are you? If somebody comes up to you and says, I believe this is true, this person won the Super Bowl, that's a world of difference to saying, here's $1,000 on the table, and this person won the Super Bowl on this date. And if that's wrong, and there's a process to determine that, you get the $1,000. How much more would you believe the person? You'd say, well, fuck, the guy's serious. He's putting $1,000 on the table. Let's do that for articles. Well, why is that a terrible idea to introduce that? We're okay with fact checkers as long as they politically agree with us. And when they're wrong, there's no recourse. But we're not okay with economic incentives for the veracity of an article. This is the elitism of journalism that makes people hate journalists. And my entire point about why the institution needs to be reconstructed. The dirty secret of journalism is things are written not because they're true. Things are written not because they're calling truth to power or they're trying to give you, the reader, an objective reality. Things are written to make money. That's what a corporate media does. And if you believe different, you're a very naive person. Everything about this process of journalism is about money. Now, as a journalist, you may believe that you're different, but how much editorial control do you really have on a day-to-day basis? How many articles can you really write in a particular direction? And what resources are you given to pursue those particular stories? So if you go and say, this is the right thing to do, but only 5 people are going to read this, but it's the right thing to do. Or I can do this top 10 things you didn't know about celebrity XYZ, and 1 million people are going to read it, and it's a completely vacuous, information bereft article. Which one do you think you're going to end up writing more often than not? Let's be intellectually honest here. And that's a problem of incentives. So the entire discussion of CoinDesk is about incentives. How do you build an outlet where you incentivize people to collaborate, communicate, share, and mix? Top 100 cryptocurrencies, giving them a space to write their stuff. That means you're in constant dialogue with the information apparati of each of those ecosystems, and they're all talking to each other. And what ends up happening is you have contradictory stories. Chain A says something about Chain B, which is right. Well, then you follow a process to find it out, but you're putting it in an open, transparent way. The ownership structure of these types of things is immaterial to the system process because you can make it a DAO. You can bring a consortium of people together to buy the asset, do things with the asset. These are the kinds of discussions and brainstorming sessions to have, because at the end of the day, what is the goal here? You want depth. You want peer review. You want timeliness. You want accuracy. You want accountability. Maybe I don't know anything about journalism, but when I read stuff, would like the things I read to have those properties. But let's go ahead and put a page in Laura Shin's book, and that's your rebuttal and reply to asking for these things and saying, I don't know anything about journalism. Furthermore, don't you want to be able to go back into the past and understand what happened? How many things have been written where there's never been a follow-up? Car crashes into McDonald's. Wow, that's terrible. Okay, 2 years later, whatever happened to that whole McDonald's car thing and the driver in the restaurant? Like, did he go to jail? I mean, was he drunk? I mean, what was the story there? Well, I'm sorry, there was never a follow-up story. Wouldn't it be nice to pull it out and then put some funding down saying, I'd like to know more. Could you look into this? So instead of an editor sitting there with a team of journalists saying, what should we write about this week? You actually have a customer involved in that product where they're coming to you and saying, could you look into this? Well, those same channels would allow for citizen journalism to be integrated into the normal journalistic process. Bob over there says there's a lot of nepotism and corruption. Ah, well, that's whistleblowing, right? Well, those same channels permit that. But remember, just like Mike Novogratz talking to his 10 people about Cardano, and all of them say no. Obviously, the author of this article, he talked to 10 people about CoinDesk, and no journalist wants this. Why? Maybe because they don't want the accountability. Maybe they don't want to try new things. Maybe they don't want to live in a new business model. Maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't be willing to put money on the table for the things that they write and say, because maybe they could be proven to be wrong. Maybe, just maybe, the powers that be are terrified about changing the incentive models, because if they do, doesn't that mean that the general public will start having expectations that they can't honor? And all that consent they manufacture with the mainstream media starts falling apart. Ooh, we can't allow that now, can we? Oof. But what the hell do I know? This is what elite people do. They say you're not qualified. They say that you don't know what you're talking about, and trust us. And then when you say, okay, but what structure, system, or process are we going to put into place so that I know that you're being objective? They say, how dare you ask? And they start personally attacking you. That's how you know you're on the right road. You're on the right trail. Because people get real scared real quickly when you want to change things for the better, because they make money for the worse. That's simple. So it's a great conversation to have about how do we get objectivity and journalistic integrity. And I'm glad that this discussion is underway and people know it, because if anything, it's going to make you a better consumer. And it's also going to make you ask something, a very fundamental thing. How do you actually know it's true? And as the person writing it, what skin do they have in the game about the claims that they're making, and consequences do they have if those claims are wrong? Oof. Not a comfortable world for those who lie for a living, huh? And as Paul Harvey would say, now you know the rest of the story. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk soon.